Guys, welcome to today's class on screenwriting, and I think screenwriting and animatics, if I'm not mistaken. I'd like to introduce our guest speaker this afternoon, Siya Masuku from Siya Funda Online. He's a renowned comic book artist as well as a designer, and he's produced several comic books already within the South African marketplace, and he's discussing with government to get his work into the national curriculum. He also has contacts internationally. Also creates works, I think, in Belgium. Belgium, always get confused. Belgium or Sweden or Switzerland? In Switzerland, close. So we thought we'd bring Siya in. He's one of the local guys doing very well, based in Soweto. And who says you can't be in Lekasi and produce great work and get national, I wouldn't say accreditation, but be nationally renowned, as well as also starting to work internationally. So Siya is a great example of using your talents and living your dream full-time. He's a full-time artist, and this little character over here is called Ulanga, the character from his comic books.
This is actually
Unjabulu, sorry. Anyway, but so what's also great is that this is the guy, I think the three of you helped animate his comic book last semester. This is the guy, this is the author, and then obviously Toby back there wrote the story, if I'm not mistaken. Unjabula Ulanga.
Right.
Yes. So guys, help me welcome Siya.
Firstly, I just want to see if we're all connected. I'm going to try to switch this on. Sometimes it doesn't work. If it does come on, just let me know. Come on?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So it should be a good day today. All right. So as Daryl said, most of it is a lie. I'm just an ordinary comic book maker. and firstly, thanks to a show of hands, who actually worked on the comics? Okay, I must get your names after this. Stunning work. I really appreciate the work you did in the time. Thank you. Cool. So before we even get to comics, I won't even say who I am. I'm hoping that the presentation will say what I do. I'm hoping that the presentation I've put together will actually explain everything for you guys. Now, Siya Funda means, anyone know? I guess? Okay, see, yeah? We are learning, yes. We are learning or we are reading. Okay, Siya Funda, Siya is plural, we are, and then singular would be Ngiya. Okay, Siyahamba, we are going, Ngiyahamba, I am going. Siya Funda means we are learning, and in this case we are learning isiZulu. So Siya Funda isiZulu is actually a book that I made around 2015. Well, I started making it in 2015 and got it published in 2016. And the aim of the book was to teach children how to read in their mother tongue. But it turned out differently, and I'll let you know as we go. The story, how it all began. So I studied graphic design at UJ many years ago. So I'm very old. And when I finished there, I actually just went on to do some normal corporate gigs. So I was doing some internships every now and then, doing graphic design work, designing pamphlets, designing tags for discovery. It bored me, okay, and I did that for a few years, but it was good for me because it taught me a lot about how things work within the corporate environment and how to relate to other creators in the teams that I worked in. It wasn't until about 2014, I was doing very well in my career, but I wasn't really satisfied with what I was doing. And that satisfaction is very difficult to explain because the first time you go into a career, the only satisfaction you seek is financial. Well, one of the most important ones is financial, and for good reasons. Reasons that you want to be independent, which is good. Others where you want to be able to help at home where possible. And these were at the back of my mind when I left studying. And yeah, I got into that, and at some point I reached the point where, okay, I've come to the next level of my career, but I'm still not happy, and I found myself just plodding partying all the time. And that's when it hit me that I'm actually I'm not doing anything that fulfills me apart from all the shiny stuff that's happening around me. So I left work. Well, I quit. That's what happened. And I spoke to my old man. He stays, well, at the time he stayed in Evander in Mpumalanga. He had a sort of nice estate there, and he had chicken coops. And I was like, look, I just want to get to a farm and just hang around with chickens, right? So I went to Mpumalanga. That was 2013, 2014. Went to Mpumalanga and stayed there for a while. And I was just tired of the whole city buzz, the whole good life, so to speak. And I got there, and it was good for me because I got to connect with my old man, but also just waking up in the morning, man, and it's quiet. You don't have to rush anywhere. And there's a strange bird outside your window. That for me was just, it's something I didn't even expect, but it's something that I certainly value even today. And that sort of changed my perspective. And I started thinking a lot about what I really want to do. We started doing this whole farming stuff, and we were doing organic farming from vegetables to chickens and all that stuff. And I think about a year later, 2015, I came back to Soweto, where I grew up in Protea North. Went to go see my mom. And we were just chatting casually, and she says to me, look, she's not, the school that she teaches at in MDA, Soweto, which is in the west of Soweto, is not getting enough books, particularly that are written in the children's mother tongue. Now my mom's been teaching there since I was born, so at the time I think it might have been close to 30 or something. So she's been there for quite a while, and she was headmaster there at the time as well. And we were talking about that, and it hit me hard, man. And I thought, I was fortunate as a kid to grow up, and now I'm saying this relatively speaking, in terms of the friends I grew up with. I was one of the lucky few who actually had a lot going. I had books. When PlayStation came out, I had it, and I didn't even care about those sort of things then, but I just had it. I was spoiled brat, I guess. And when my mom said the kids are not getting books, I'm like, that's such a simple thing, right? Such a simple thing. It is a book, and never mind all the other stuff. And I thought, okay, if I could do something, maybe I could make one book and then move on with my life and not care at all. And the idea of CF started coming to me. Okay, how do I make a book with the strengths that I have that's going to teach kids how to pronounce words? Because that was my difficulty as we were growing up in Soweto, is that, for instance, in egg, in isiZulu, is called iqanda. Okay? Now there are three basic clicks in isiZulu: the C, the Q, and the X, for those who don't know. And the Q is in the middle of the tongue, the X is the side of the tongue, and the C is the front. Now, to pronounce iqanda, you'd have to be able to articulate yourself by actually working the middle part of your tongue so that it hits the upper palate of your mouth. But I would get into the house of the parents like, Mama, ngicela iqanda. I should want to slap it. It's like, no, I keep telling you it's iqanda. But my friends in Tswana, Sotho, Venda, Shona, all languages, right, in Soweto. And I mean, we all sort of made our own little language, and we go back home to our houses, and our mothers want to slap us because of that. But I mean, this is how we grew up, and I thought to myself, if I can learn how to really pronounce all these words in isiZulu and then transfer it to the kids in school, then I'd be happy. And that's how the story started. I thought, okay, I'm giving myself 6 months. It's January 2015. In June 2015, I would be able to donate books there. Why did I choose June? Because it was my birthday. I thought it would be a nice birthday gift for myself. Okay. So I had it all figured out, man. I was like, okay, cool. Now mind you, I had no business training. Okay. I had no publishing training. All I knew was to take a pencil and just draw, and that's all I did actually. And it felt kind of weird in the beginning because everyone around me is waking up going to work. So by the way, now I've moved from Mpumalanga to Soweto, and I've had to explain to my dogs that, look, I don't think chickens do it for me anymore, man. I want to go back to Soweto. Now I'm in Soweto, and it's a buzz, right? Like, Mpumalanga is so chilled. Now everyone's waking up and going to work, and there's sort of guilt start creeping in. It's like, all I do is draw, and people are waking up going to work. And I'm saying this because you may find that sometime in your careers, you choose that sort of route where you decide that you're gonna dive head into whatever it is you're passionate about, and not do the conventional way of doing things. There will be days, months of guilt, of feeling insecure about your abilities, of doubt. Those will be there, and they never go away, no matter how far you are in your career. However, it's a subtle reminder that to be able to balance your doubt with optimism, so not be too optimistic and not be too doubtful. That's what helped me anyway, without even knowing. So in any case, here I am trying to convince myself that what I'm doing is actually worthwhile. Mind you, no one knows about what I'm doing. I didn't even tell my mom I'm doing this. I just started doing it. And she's coming in and out of the house every day afterwards, like, what the hell are you doing with your life, right? And all of that stuff, so like, okay, cool. Now I had no choice but to get it right. And I started drawing all these stories, all these animals. I had this fascination with animals ever since I was a kid, and never mind going back to Ezlali and the Pundus, but I had this fascination about animals, just how they live, what language do they communicate with. They must have language, surely. I mean, their thoughts, to us, they may seem crazy for the things that they do, but they must have wild imagination to be doing the things that they do. And just learning about animals, and whilst I was drawing them, the anatomy and how they behave in the environment, etc. Also learning things about sound, like for instance, I don't know as much as the sound guys in the room, but a simple idea that there are sound waves we cannot hear because they're so high-pitched. Now, I can only imagine the fly sitting there doing such a high pitch, probably just mocking me as I speak, right? But I can't hear it. And those sort of things started coming to me as I started drawing all these animals, and I thought, okay, cool, I've got all these animals, and this is using graphite or pencil. I think there are about 33 odd animals that I drew at the time. And I thought, okay, how do I convert this into something really cool, something really artistic but still adds value? I love the idea of working with negative and positive space. For those who are not aware, that is, it's a good analogy was doing arts back in high school. We would draw still arts, and our teacher would say, don't draw what's there. So they'll put like apples and stuff on the table. So don't draw the apples, draw the space. And like the first time you get in there, like, God, draw the space, And then you sort of learn through there, it became, after months of doing that, it became harder to actually draw the apple. It made you actually realize the shape around the apple, that makes the apple. And that's the negative space drawing aspect of it. And I fell in love with that so much that I thought, okay, it would be a good thing to do for this particular project. And I felt, okay, cool. Artistically, what do I feel like doing? I thought lino. I was pretty good at lino when I was back studying at varsity, and that's how it all began. Now, you guys familiar with lino cut? Yeah? Okay, for those who aren't, it's a process where you take a tool shaped like a knife, probably about this long, and it's got different edges. Some of them are wedges, and some of them are concave or convex. And the whole idea is to cut out the image from the linoleum mat that you're working on. Okay, debate for those who understand how linoleum feels. Now it's soft enough that anything can cut through it, but it's still hard. And if you want to go easy with it, you put it in the sun for a while. It softens up, and then you can cut through. Now, as you can see, I started cutting through this, cutting through the scorpion there, and it's nice because you can do all these patterns, which create sort of it creates the rhythm, creates the atmosphere that the scorpion is within. And now the trick is that when you first draw the stuff on paper, and then at the back of the paper, you color it with, let's say, like a 6B or 8B, something really dark, even charcoal. And then you put it flat, you put the dark side on the mat, and then you draw on the lines of what you drew. And then it translates itself onto the mat, and then you start cutting out the lines and coming up with stuff that's actually going to surprise you when it prints out. And that was the case. But the trick is to understand that everything inverses. So if you're going to put, you guys notice like an ambulance and the word is inversed. When you look at it in the mirror, it looks normal. But when you look at it in face value, it looks the other way around. That's exactly how lines work. So you've got to be able to perceive that everything you do is going to come up looking the opposite way. And I learned all those things obviously in school, but I had forgotten them. And when I was working on these, I went back and forth trying to get it right, get it just right. And eventually I did. This process took about six to 8 months, doing two mats a day, 2 lino mats a day, A4 in size, and my hands would get bruised. I'll cut myself. I was literally, my parents actually laughed at me at the time, so I had blood, sweat, and tears, and it was literally the case. But it was also quite cathartic in a sense that when the things come out, it's just, you don't expect how it's going to come out. All those lines literally just make themselves. And that's what fascinated me about the project. But now it's June, and I'm thinking, gosh, I've got like all these line things to do, and I thought I'd make this deadline. But the good thing is that it was my deadline, so I could jump on it and then move it forward. But that's the thing. So I thought, okay, cool. In the middle of that, I was also doing a lot of meeting people who've done self-publishing, meeting people who do funding, trying to get money to actually produce this, because it dawned on me that, okay, cool, I can do this, and it's going to be stuck on the computer. But when I spoke to the printers, when I spoke to the bookstores, the red tapes are crazy. And at that time, I know nothing about the industry, so I thought, okay, cool, the least I can do is just continue to make this look better, and maybe something will pop up. We went through the process. I started meeting mentors and teachers of art at primary level, because this is what the book was geared for. And at first, I'd have like a spider in the middle of the page and nothing around it. And I had this thing, and I was so positive about it. I showed it to all these art teachers. It's obvious now, but when I think about it now, it didn't occur to me that, okay, cool, a spider standing alone in the middle of the page, it doesn't tell a story. It may look great, but what is the spider wearing? What is it doing? What's the environment it lives in? And that whole idea of personifying the actual spider. And literally, you can see at the bottom there, I gave it reading glasses with 8 eyeballs for 8 eyes, and it's coming out of what do you call this? Oh, I forgot. It's coming out of its hole there to catch prey, and all of that tells a story on its own. You don't even need words. And I thought to myself, okay, cool. I'm going to give myself another 6 months. Now my deadline is December 2015. And you know what, it was every day of the week just getting this thing done, and we made it, December 2016. And I thought, okay, cool. February, we're going to get this work in the school's curriculums. And February came, and I realized that all this stuff is just black and white, it's boring. And then we started again. I met with Manga Chaba, and he was the top artist in Soweto, in Orlando. His studios are by the Hector Peterson Memorial. And I said to him, look, how can I make this thing better? How can I make it look really good? And he looked at it for a while and said, well, you just need color. And that's literally what we did. We started hand painting stuff. And as you can see there, I started printing samples in the bottom left corner. And really, this thing that started off as it's just going to be a 6-month stint, I'm seeing my whole life now, like a year later, I'm still busy with this. And people are looking like, this guy's going crazy, right? And in the midst of all that, I mean, you guys must understand that it wasn't just, okay, cool, the next step is that. There was a time where I literally hit a wall, and I let go of the project for like a month, and I went into a slump, depression. It was just, it was an agonizing process. And I don't know, it's just blind faith, I guess, that made me keep doing it. And one thing led to another. Just when you thought, okay, cool, this project is going nowhere, and you start doing other stuff, and then bam, it hits you, and then you're back at it in 3 months flat. You're not even seen, right? So this is what happened. We started making artist proof, and it was hand painted and framed, and the artwork is being sold it's been sold online. But I mean, we showcase it in galleries, etc. Now the transition to color, as you can see, there left to right, makes a huge difference. I mean, in anything, especially, look, I mean, there's art that works without color, and sometimes I love it, but color just really gives life to the whole image, especially if you're going to be working with kids. Again, the whole personification of the character, just what do meerkats do, how they live, okay? There's one guy who climbs on top of the hill. In every situation, he climbs on top of a small hill and is literally on the lookout. Sometimes there's more than one, but there's always someone on the lookout while the others go hunting, and then they swap shifts. And the whole idea is like, okay, cool, so these guys are really geared up. They've got binoculars, they've got goggles, like no light is going to touch the whole group, right? So, and that was it. Ikaka is a skunk. In isiZulu, it's called Ikaka. And yeah, I mean, again, simple things like add a ribbon to it. It just makes you start thinking about the animal. Okay, why? It's not even an animal. It's this character. Why is she wearing a ribbon? Okay. Why did I say it's a she? Okay, those sort of things. Okay, why we do this? Because reading is fun, right? And I believe so much in early childhood development. Although I think that our government is not paying enough attention to it. And I also believe strongly in helping kids learn their mother tongue. Now, actually,
Ushiwo kanjani? Omkhulu, omncane. Isicabucabu sinecebo lokucaca kucikicane. Isicabucabu sinecebo lokucaca kucikicane.
So we did the book, and okay, cool. Now we are ready. We're ready to publish it. And then there was the other part where, what if someone can't see? Okay, how they learn from the book. Okay, let's make an audio version. And all other stuff that are coming in. Okay, what if they can't? Well, what if they can't hear and see? Okay, Braille. Like all these things start coming in, and you're thinking this thing can go on forever. Okay. But in this instance, this was the funny page because it's a spy that has ideas or a plan to creep up on Iqinqane is actually the little finger. Now I thought, man, I'm not going to draw a little finger. Spiders eating fingers and giving it to kids. It's just going to be weird. And it changed eventually to on an insect. Now, looking back now, I was actually mistaken by assuming that the kids are going to think it's weird. And what I've learned now is that children, we shouldn't prejudge our audience. Children are smarter than we think. Okay? Darryl was saying earlier that we trying to get the books into government. Actually, this morning I got a call from Gauteng Education Department. They want more of these books. Okay, and that's great. But they said as well that, yeah, but the colors, the brown needs to be brown now because kids want brown. Right? And also, you know, they were just picking all these things. It's like, okay, but you get it, it's cool. You know? So my point is, when you're telling your story, or you're making your character, or you try not to prejudge your audience. The audience is probably just as smart, if not smarter than you think. Okay? And really just give them your best shot and see what they say. And that's what I've learned. Okay, I've got two more. I've got the Q and the X sounds.
Usho kanjani? Omkhulu, omncane. Iqude, liququda, iqope. Ushiwo kanjani? Omkhulu, omncane. Ixoxo, lixakekile, licinekile, futhi liyachafuza.
And mind you, how we recorded this, you wouldn't believe, oh, maybe you might, because the sound isn't all that lekker. How we recorded this was with my iPhone in the back in the garden, and we were like, okay, cool, we've got so many days to get this done, let's just get it done. And you know, the people who've listened to the audiobook haven't really complained about the sound. I think the point of what I'm saying is that also being able to adapt and being able to use the tools that you have probably gives it the quality. In fact, you guys, who listens to hip hop? I'm sure someone listens to hip hop. Okay, I like MF Doom a lot, and I remember listening to him at that Red Bull, one of those Red Bull talks, and he says most of the stuff he did in his earlier years were literally with the worst instruments, like beginner stuff. But now, this is the stuff that people, his fans, are saying that was your best stuff, you know. And for me, it sort of was a reminder. It's like, look, I mean, use what you have. Sometimes you won't have the best software or the best hardware, but if you can use what you have and find a way to make it creative, it actually gives it a very unique sound or look or feel. Now, means translator. The book comes with the translator page, and obviously it's for non-isiZulu speakers, meaning it's one of people, Chivenda, English, everyone. Because I come across even a lot of Zulu-speaking people who don't know half the words in the book, and I'm kind of glad because look, if we were to make something that's obvious, then it's a waste. I think it's a waste. You want to make something that even if it gets criticized, and even if it gets banished from society, at least it made people think or made people feel a certain way. And I think that's really what we need to be doing as artists. So Momosh will explain everything from, all the words in the book in alphabetical order, and hopefully you can put the words together and make sense of what's happening and learn something else new along the way. Okay, the team, very simple team. Now, me personally, I've never been someone who goes out there and just tries to get people or scouts team. I normally just meet people because of the work I do. I'm meeting these two ladies today, and somehow sometimes things develop into bigger things, sometimes they don't. But these are the sort of people who play a very integral role in getting Siyafunga isiZulu where it is. Umapumi Njobe is an editor. She writes manuals for isiZulu, lecturing isiZulu at Wits Language School. A very highly respected teacher in the language. The narrator, you were hearing her voice, Wamurari Dwaba. She teaches isiZulu at Redham House, Midrand Waterfall. Is it Waterfall? Yeah. She teaches isiZulu there. Great voice, great kids. And then David Ackerman, based in Cape Town. He does our web stuff. That's the cool thing about tech. It's like, I've actually never met David in person. We've only been talking through Skype. And we get everything done. If you go on the Siafunda website now, it's swift. David, if I need him, just drop him on WhatsApp. He gets everything done. Boom. So also using that thing, like using the resources that you have. No need to be flying or taking road trips to far places. And our main strategies are simple. Online, most of what we do is online. So our bookstore has books in many indigenous languages, and we are growing. We sell books that I've written or made, and we sell books by other authors as well locally. This also came about because you walk into an exclusive books or any other exclusive books place, and you find that most of the books are in English, and then there's a percentage of Afrikaans. And then if you're lucky enough to find an indigenous language, you're probably not even happy with it. And it hit me hard. It's like, no, how are we in South Africa? This is a reality, you know. And I thought, okay, cool. Rather than complaining about it, it certainly didn't help. Let's build our own, and let's see how far we can get with it. Maybe we'll do well, maybe we won't, but let's start. And that's how the online shop started. Facebook, we get a lot of interaction with the people who follow us on Facebook. I am on Instagram, and I post a lot about our outreach, how we go out to the kids and actually do stuff with them. And I'll explain that later. The website, siafundaonline.co.za, just giving you an idea of how it looks. And it's so hard, you know. It's like we just want to make this website plainly in isiZulu. Okay, but wait, not all South Africans are Zulu. Okay, cool. But we can't make it in all 11 languages either. It's just technically, it was just a lot of work, and it was very difficult to pull off at the time. Okay, cool. So just make it in isiZulu and have translations. And if you want your translation, you can click on the word and translate. Okay, that was the idea there. And we also try to simplify it as much as we can. People hopefully are able to just go on and apply for lessons. I also tutor in isiZulu. So when people are looking for lessons, if you're based in Cape Town, you want lessons, you fill in a form, and we set up the times, and obviously we arrange that you pay for travel costs, and wherever you are. If you want us to do it at your home, we'll do it there. If you want to come to us, we'll do it there. We've got the shop. Umlando is the history of which I've just broken down. Amaluma, the members, which I've just showed you the team. Izifazela, our testimonials. You can have a look at what people think of the work we're doing. And yeah, the best button there is donate, but people don't use it. But that's the thing. Because we are such a small enterprise, and we are always influenced by the amount of funds we have. I mean, you guys are artists, artists in the sense that you guys have imagination. There is no amount of money that can limit your imagination. And just like you guys, our imagination goes as far as possible, but the budget is never really matching that. So, yeah, the more funding we can get, the better we can get at what we deliver. Just some of the bookstores around the country. In Johannesburg, we've got several bookstores that we are tied in with. Bridge Books, Commissioner and Maboneng. There's Lala Jenny Hillbrow, Book Dealers in Rivonia, David Kroot in Maboneng, and on Jan Swartz, Ethnic Kids based towards Pretoria side, and Book Circle Capital in Melbourne. In Cape Town, All African Books, Clubs Bookshop, and in Durban, Adams Books. And Ice Books. And we've been fortunate enough to exhibit it on several occasions. And what the exhibitions have taught me as well is that, in particular the one on the bottom, in the middle, bottom middle, the image, that was the Book Business Colloquium at UJ in 2017. And how they structured it is that bookmakers from around the world, from Europe, the States, come together here and showcase how they make book as a form of art. Now, I thought that was a pretty fresh concept because, for instance, there's a guy who literally found a pole in the street and then he connected, he welded, so like a metal going around the pole, and he started writing around it. And that's a book on its own. And I started understanding that there's so many ways in which we can make books. Some guys make sculptures and they write on it. It's a book. And that's what opened my eyes really on how people are being creative about their books globally. We've been able to reach a wider market by obviously through podcasts, Power FM and Cliff Central. After donating, well, we published in 2016 at the Africans Festival, and my aim was to donate 300 books to the school. The school was there. I didn't tell you the most important thing. I'm glad that it came up. So, in 2016, how I got the funding. In 2016, I was sitting there. It was around June. It was like, my second birthday is coming. I haven't done this thing. And I thought, okay, cool. I started asking around, and someone mentioned online crowdfunding. Any of you guys heard of that? Okay. As you might know about online crowdfunding, it's an amazing tool, but it actually requires a lot of work. And if you're not aware of how it works, you might be sort of sidetracked and think, okay, I'm just going to plug my stuff there on Kickstarter or something, and I'm going to make money, and then boom, you actually daily, well in my case daily, I was posting stuff. Now, I'm pretty much introverted, okay? For me to be even standing here talking, it takes a lot of psyching up, but I don't even like posting stuff. You know, I like just being in my own space, and I get a feeling some of you guys are like that. Now, this crowdfunding business, man, got me just feeling like I'm just exposing myself, and it also told me actually that there's nothing to it really. And I started doing it, man. I was doing it. So the plan was I've got 30 days. Primary goal was to raise 25,000 Rand. And optimum goal was 150,000 Rand. If 30 days come and I haven't hit 25,000 Rand, this is with Thunderthought. The backers get their money back. And the thing is considered as misunderstood, or it's a failure basically. And we went on, and funding was coming in drips and drabs. And with the crowdfunding thing, you've got to be sort of slick about it. You've got to have people you know, especially people in high places who have big followings, and say, look, if you share my info every day, you'll get a free this. Okay? And the more you get, the easier things become. But I didn't get it in the first 30 days. And we hit 20,000 Rand, and there was 3 days left. And I had a mentor at the time. I started speaking to him. He's like, what do you think I should do? And he said, look, there's no other way. You just got to ask them to give you an extension. And then I was like, no, actually, we got 3 days. We might make 5 grand. And then the second day came, still on 20. The last day came, still on 20. Thunderfund, I need more days. Like, how many days you need? Give me another month. Like, okay. It was surprisingly easy. And then 2 weeks in that month, within 2 weeks, we got the Daily Maverick to write about the book. Daily Maverick picked up the story. He was like, okay, cool, this is cool. Here's an article. And someone in the DRC gives me a call. But I've been getting weird calls since the crowdfunding thing. So I've been very suspicious. And then I get a call from the DRC. I'm like, man. And then this guy says, I'll fund the project if you're willing to meet me as soon as possible So I'm looking at the number. I'm like, where are you calling from? It's like, I'm in the DRC. Okay. So I pick a date. I picked the date. It's like, okay, let's meet next week. And I said, we'll meet in Soweto at Sakunzi. And the guy's like, okay, cool. I'll see you there. His name was Rodney Quick. And he was there quickly, just like his name. We meet there, and the guy starts ordering wine. I'm like, wait. Let's talk about this stuff. He's like, no, this stuff is done, man. It's funded. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'll put in 150,000. I was like, okay, let's get some wine then. You know, it's like that. It's like some of these things they talk about, people's like miracles, you know. It's like, you're just shocked, you know. And you know what? True to his word, I mean, when the balance came, I had like 170,000 rand, you know, to get this project going, you know. And it's one of those things where if you're just willing to do the work and be ready, you like doors open where there were walls, basically. And that was the funding process. So yeah, news started picking up. People started getting ideas about what we are doing. People started buying the books, and we said, okay, wait a minute, we can actually start living the dream, so to speak. You know, we can actualize this and make this our thing. I remember I deleted my CVs, and I was like, yeah, okay, let's do this. And I'm glad I did, because even when times went bad, because times do get bad again, you realize that you've deleted your CV, so you gotta make it work, okay? And that's the story of Siyafunde IsiZulu. Now, what is next is that we created Siyafunde Farm, which is an extension to Siyafunde IsiZulu, which also is going to be created with the means of putting our utmost artistic expression using fine arts, okay? And I'm about to jump into comics quick, but I need to find out if I have time. Do I? Okay. Now, through fine arts, I enjoy fine arts because it's sort of like a meandering way of getting into the solution of whatever you're practicing, okay? It's different to digital art, okay? Actually, just a few days ago, I was watching, you guys seen American Gods, the series? Yeah? The book is better, if you've read it. If you haven't, I think you should try. The episode I was watching, the guy, this little kid, probably like about 7, he's playing, you know, back in the 60s, 70s, there's that game where the ball comes, hits and then comes on the outside. So that was the first really computer-generated game, and this kid is playing. So, okay, we take him back in time, and then someone hits the clock. The kid literally puts the console down, and it sits on the piano, and the metronome starts going, tick, tick, and it starts jamming. But really, really good stuff, you know, like Bach. And his dad is just sitting there thinking, okay, and then he hits the end of his note, and then he goes back to play, and then the dad hits the timer. I'm like, okay, that's art. And then it fast forwards. He's now playing Nintendo. Okay, I'd say it's in the 80s now, 90s maybe, early 90s. Same thing. Sits on the piano and he starts playing. And his dad says, okay, cool. He goes to varsity. As he goes to varsity, but he's now into IT, and he's programming all this stuff. And then he hears next door someone's playing the violin. He shuts everything down and goes next door and says, play the sound again. It's the same sound that he was playing as a kid. And then he starts merging that with programming. And he lets literally the language create the rest of the symphony. And then he goes home and he starts showing off to his dad. And his dad is like, wow, that's better than Bach. How did you do that? And he's like, no, so I was programming. It's like, dad's like, nah. Okay, no. And that's the thing. That's the illusion that the digital art gives you. It's almost like it's like a quick fix. You know, you don't smell the paint. You don't get to drop the paint, the tips. You know, and this is what we're trying to create with the Siyafunde brand in terms of the books we're creating, is where we're trying to keep it, I don't want to say authentic, because even digital is authentic to a degree, but we want to keep the essence of bringing forth every feeling, every feeling that all the 5 senses, okay, which is smell, touch, hearing, tasting, and seeing.
Smell.
Smell, yeah, smell and seeing. So fine arts gives us the ability to really do that. Digital illustration, which is what I battle with till this day, is that you can't smell the paint. But in any case, Siyafunda FM is, we want to continue with that tradition and build a book where we tell a story about more of a fable, and it's using like the Jabberwocky sort of nonsense poem, where words are just used to sound good or to make rhymes, alliteration and assonance. Words are just used for fun, and there is a story behind it, but it really doesn't make sense. And Siyafunda FM is an extension of that. So I'm going to play just a quick clip of the story for you guys, so you can get a sense of what the story is going to be like. So I hope you get an idea of what the story, or the essence of what they're trying to bring out of the stories, like those, almost like those folklore, those very, I mean, those stories that our elders would tell orally, but they were never actually written. So that's where we're going with this, which is in high contrast to what we're doing in comics, which I'll sharing with you right about now. Now, Unjabulo, this guy, Unjabulo, anyone, you know what Unjabulo means?
Yeah, happiness.
Happiness, yeah. Jabulo means happiness, okay? Unjabulo is, well, how the story came about. So, Oxford University Press says, look, we want a story that teaches kids about how to overcome bullying at school, teaches kids about sharing, friendship, family, and also in the kid's life there should be some sort of support system, mainly family. And I thought, okay, cool, yeah, we can do that, let's say. But the point is, they've read Siyafunda isiZulu, and because of how we made the play with words, so the letters we were given were AJ, J, and J. So, and hence the name Njabulo. That's how the name came about. And cool. Based on the brief, we figured, okay, cool. This kid gets bullied at school. Okay, maybe he's weird in a way. Obviously, the first thing I thought of, what would be the identifying feature of Njabulo that even if he was not done digitally, even if he was just painted with one stroke, you would get an idea of who he is. And I thought, okay, cool. He's weird, maybe he's a geek. He's got glasses. Cool. But as soon as I started putting glasses on, just wearing the glasses, it felt like Harry Potter. I was like, okay, so just make them red and blue. And it changed the whole thing. And that's where the character developed. And Ulama on the other side, Ulama is, La means the sun. Ulama is Njabulo's friend. She's got vitiligo. And till this day, guys, I still don't know what vitiligo is in my mother tongue. And so this is the purpose of this whole process, for us to be able to break down what's there and actually help our cultures and languages evolve. So Ulama, we say her skin is spotted, you know. Ulama is vitiligo. Now, unlike Njabulo, Njabulo sort of knows what he wants to do with his life. He just wants to build rockets and just go to the moon, or just go to space. But Ulama doesn't know what she wants to do. And we find out actually in the new comic that has come out, we find out more or less what she wants to do later. But in any case, Ulama and Njabulo are the two main characters, and they are based on, we wanted to create characters that are contemporary in the sense that, unlike Siyafunda, a farm where everything is done in the farm, quite frankly, I'm also tired of the narrative that any books written in indigenous languages or is about the people of my race, black people. It talks about huts and you know, Imaura, you know. I mean, there's so many of us who grew up in the suburbs, you know. So, I mean, a lot of black people who've never even been to the townships. And the comics is really geared mostly towards that, saying, okay, cool, here is a young black boy or black girl who wants to aspire to, they don't want to be a policeman, they just want to make music, okay? Let's tell a good story about a young kid who wants to make music and then coming from the suburb or a township. And that's where the idea came from. Now, it had, we have 4 comics that we've built around the story. Ulama would be this one, so we just pass this around. And then Njabulo, you might have to just open this one, and then Onkiziongi is the latest. Now, the whole idea is to build a series where kids can grow the characters, okay? You guys are aware of, like, I mean, you watch, for instance, the first time I saw Superman, he was grown. He was grown and he had superpowers. And I thought, how was he as a kid? You know, I didn't think in depth, but that crossed my mind. Like, I wonder how Superman was as a kid. And then they'll have origins, especially in comic. They'll have an issue called Origins before it comes out in film. And then Origins is basically Superman as a child. Maybe they'll just call it Smallville or whatever the case is. And then you start to understand, oh, okay, so Superman was also bullied, okay. Or Superman was a weirdo, was a loner, all those sort of things. And then you start relating more to this big guy. And it starts becoming something that's actually a part of you. It's like, okay, I see how it's going, that type of thing. And this is, with these comics, we started the other way around. Instead of bringing out the hero, doing all this magic, we're like, actually, let the kids not even know this person is a hero, okay? And let the kids see this person with their flaws and just identify this person from the go. And let the kids just grow with the character. And maybe in 10, 20 years' time, maybe Unjabulo will be Elon Musk. You know, and the kids will, I remember when Unjabulo was just a dummy. And that's the whole process. Now, the comics are in 4 parts, and they're getting passed around, so they'll get that side. If you're in the middle, you would have gotten it quicker. But in any case, the idea of the comics, I'm just teasing. The idea of the comics is that with these 4 parts, we wanted to make them look different. Well, I wanted to make them look different. And if you look closely to the illustrations, none of them look quite the same. But the color schemes are repeated. For instance, with speech bubbles, Unjabulo is wearing a yellow jersey, and his speech bubble is yellow. And when you look at Ukwantlesi Yongisa, the last one, the speech bubble doesn't have an extension to the mouthpiece. It's just boom in yellow, and you should know that it is Unjabulo. And it's a big risk, because the reader might get confused, especially if it's a kid, and think, okay, where is that speech bubble going? But because of the color connection, they should be able to connect. But more than just the color, the tone, okay, the ideas of the speaker, okay. We've come with this character who all they want to do is go to space. And in fact, as a matter of fact, Unjabulo literally tells Ulama, don't worry, when we grow, I'm going to build a rocket and I'll take you to the sun, you know? And Ulama is like, Ulama dreamt of being in space. Ulama like, I've been there, man. You know, so we play around with the scientific part and the not so scientific part, the metaphysical part. But in any case, taking these comics from one level to the next, okay? Like we attempted to do with Siyafunda. It's like, okay, cool, we've got this in print. What's the next level? Get it in audio, okay? So there's an audio book. But now, on this version, I'm going to show you quickly what my intention is. Sorry, I don't know, it should be showing. I don't know why it's, I must have missed it somehow. But, okay, so we moved on from the printing to the more digital side of the comics, motion comics, okay? Now this is what I did, which was I went to the team and said, guys, I like this, but can you make it better? And I'll show you what they've done. But the whole idea is like, okay, let's not just have it in print. Let's give these characters life, okay? Let's make them move. And then maybe at some point we'll be able to augment their reality, and they'll jump out of the book and they'll be right in front of us. Okay, what do the books teach? Okay, cool. The words are not showing. It's fine, I'll just read them out. What do the books teach? Soft skills mainly. Hopefully we help children learn how to communicate better. How to, hopefully we help them enhance their creativity. Personal development in terms of personal management, and empathy, to have more empathy, and to stay motivated and inspired. But really in depth, what we're trying to achieve, we want to help kids really appreciate themselves more, where they come from, their ideas, let them know that their ideas are worth it, they really should go for them. Embrace their own language, their cultures, also learn other cultures and not be ignorant and not fear other cultures. Increase their curiosity. We're trying to create heroes that are relatable. Hence, we're starting the heroes while they're still young, and we're hoping that by that it'll be easier for kids to connect with the heroes, so that by the time they are Superman, it's like yeah, well, obviously you're supposed to be doing that, you know. And that's really where we're trying to grow, and grow bigger hearts, and become better leaders. So, as you might see with the artwork that's passing around, we are already on our 4th edition now, and this has been 2 years. To be honest, it's gone by so quickly, but it's been a lot of hard work. I mean, I can't tell you how many literally sleepless nights I've had where I know that I'm falling so far behind on my deadline. But even more than that, it's been so, like, for instance, okay, when I was lucky, I mean, we were financially, you know, okay. With Ulanga, there was literally no funds. We had no funds for Ulanga, and I just went through with the making of the project, and I thought, maybe, even if it doesn't work out, at least we'll have the book ready for when we have funds. And I had set a deadline, and like a month before the deadline, the funds came through. Ulanga came through when it was supposed to come through. And to be honest, we're sitting right there with Botlizi Yongis. Funders are just scratching their heads, trying to figure out if it's worth funding the project. But you know what? We will convince them, because we believe in the work, and the book will come out eventually. I'm saying this to just make it real for you guys. Like, at any level, you get to that point where you're like, oh, I've got this big film to produce. I need 5 million. And it doesn't matter what you've done in the past, you still gotta go convince the funders that it's worth putting 5 million in the film. And that's just part of the whole creative process. In fact, the more problems you wake up with, the more life is worth living, I think. I mean, if everything is solved, what's the point? Now, what's your name? Sorry. Caitlin? Caitlin? Mia. Okay, you're the only two who've worked on here. Okay. So Caitlin and Mia and Daryl have done some really cool stuff with regards. You'll see why I showed mine first, so you just see how far back it was. But the whole idea was like, look, we need to really move the comic stuff forward now. We need to move away from print. Print is expensive. It's like distribution is hard. As a self-publisher, it's difficult. But if we can do it digitally, and people can access it online, and those who can't access it online can get the print. But if there are options, then we are better off. And here's the motion comic. Cool, and there was that, and I feel it really shifted how kids respond with the outreach programs that we've done in the past 2 years. The first book, Unjavulo, I mean, literally I was sitting there and reading the book, and yeah, the kids liked it. But when they saw this, the kids were just glued to the screen, and those sort of little nuances, using tech and combining it with the old way of doing things, I think it's the way to go. Okay, so we've been through the website, and yeah, I mean, to elaborate on what I just said, the point of what we're trying to achieve is to diversify our storytelling methods. So not only in print, but we want to be able to take the story and put it in puppet show. Take the story and put it in an animated film. Take the story and put it in music, in poetry, in fine arts, in learning manuals, in gaming. And the 4 comics now, we try to, with the team, we've got the norm, with our script writer, we're really trying to elevate the comics now and just saying, okay, cool, what's the next, what do kids enjoy? I mean, kids love Spider-Verse, Spider-Man, Spider-Verse, they love the artwork, the graphics. Let's achieve that. Let's do an African version of that, and I'll go a little bit more into that quickly. So in our production team, we quite a tight-knit team with a script writer on Dobby right there. We've got our videographer, Zweli, and then Daryl and his team will be working on the animation. And really what we are trying to achieve with this is that create live action and mix it with comics. And the story starts with literally people acting out Njabolo and Kati. And slowly but surely, the comic side starts coming in the speech bubbles, in the subtitles. And by the end of the film, it's just a comic. And I feel that in that way, we'll be able to bring together grown-ups and children to watch the same film and enjoy it and learn from it, hopefully. It's just one way that we feel that the story needs to evolve. Also, not only doing it in that way, but also doing it in 2D. You're able to view it on virtual reality. Also with the paperbacks, the printed works, have it augmented. Where if you have an app and you show your app to the book, images jump up. You know, what else can we do? And I think if we're going to have a character, and all it is just a 2-dimensional figure, and we leave it there, I think we're doing a disservice to the character. We need to be able to take the character out, and literally, there'll come a time where, in fact, you can do that with augmented reality, where you can literally, using the same app, the character can stand in front of you, and you can actually live in the same world as the character. That's where we need to get. And ideas around this is, get merchandising behind it. You know, you guys probably have crazy ideas where you think it's crazy now until you realize that, oh, sure, if I talk to Pep and say, I've got a comic book and shades, they'll sell it. You know, find a way to convince them. Take your character and bring it to life and make it 3D. Go to a 3D printing company and do it. Now, of course, you guys all know these things. We all know these things, but to actually implement them takes the effort, and we end up not doing it. And we see them get done somewhere, and we're like, how did? But they just did it, right? So it's finding ways to let the readers really fall in love with these characters by doing all these sort of other things around it. Okay, and what we really want to achieve with the project, like we're saying, like a film which mixes various aspects of art, live action, and meaning performance art and comics, using the four-part series, and we want to try and make it all ages. You know, I watch Disney films now. When I watched them at school, in primary school, when they used to force feed us Disney, I was like, this stuff is boring, man. Yeah, there were selective things about Disney that were cool, but you watch it now, like, that stuff is heavy. Man. It's like you watch it, like it's like Peter Pan. Okay, I've had to literally go and watch every Disney film, and I thought to myself, wow, that Disney guy was just on another level. So I watched Peter Pan. You've got this guy, Peter, who wants to live in this fantasy world, okay? But there's this, who's the guy with the Crook or something? Captain Crook or something. Captain Hook. And he's basically saying, get out of this fantasy life, man. Come be a real man, you know? And it's like, to look like you, I'd rather fly. And you think about it, like, I think that's where most of us artists are staying right now, where we have our imagination and it grips us. Sometimes our own characters are more interesting than the people around us, and then we look strange, right? And I say, be proud of that. Like, my characters are more interesting than anyone else I've met, you know? And it's good to have characters that you love, you know? And now, you get to a point where you've got this Peter Pan sort of like character who's doing all these cool things, and then the next day you have to wake up to the real world and you have to like contend with, you know, the limits of the three dimension. It's really tough when you start to think about it. But you start watching Disney and you realize, yeah, man, I mean Pinocchio, let's not even go to Pinocchio. You start watching all these films and you're like, man, these things actually, they shouldn't even be watched by kids. These things are for grown-ups, you know. And we want to try and achieve that with our stories, where yeah, we want to give the kids their magic, okay. But we also want to tell them the truth, okay. But we have to be responsible with how we tell them the truth, okay. And also, we don't want to prejudge them and think they won't get it, because trust me, kids get it. In fact, Hayao Miyazaki, the Ghibli guy, okay, he just said it straight. Like, he's just sick and tired of doing ordinary stories where the plot is predictable. It's like kids have had enough of that. He does plots where things start where his character is just in a strange place, and he flips and he literally throws the character in a dangerous place and says, okay, how are you going to get out of that? And the kids get it, and they really learn from that. Now, in terms of the outreach programs we've done, in 2018, this is Mseni Primary School. This is the school where my mom teaches, is principal at. And yeah, over the years, we've donated books, toys, stationery to the school. And the kids really enjoy the work we're doing for them, and it's so fulfilling. And we are hoping that we can continue. Personally, I hope I can just build a library for the school, because the school doesn't have a library. What they have is that in each class is like a sort of, they call it a library box or something, and they've built like a shelf, and there's a few books in each class. Okay, if we can build them a nice, really good library, that'll be great. So we're working a lot with the school, and we're trying to build some sort of momentum with them. It's been fun. We've done some readings. I've done some readings at the Sandton Library, Hillbrow, Noveling, Museum Africa, Troyville Victoria Yards, Soweto, Orlando, Levels Backpackers. I don't know if you guys have been there. Very nice place, by the way. There was a camping there, but let me not go in the Levels Backpackers promotion. Very, very good place. Melville, Diepsloot, and basically where we want to get to is where we create literally like a virtual reality environment where we present stories in ways that, especially children in the townships, have never experienced them before. It's let alone that they hardly have books, but literally let them experience the characters in virtual reality and see what happens. And that's where we go. Yeah, so in simple terms, what determines a success for this project is that taking this artwork from print and presenting it in different mediums, not just digital, but even puppet shows one day, even creating action figures. Who knows? Maybe we'll get there. And obviously go international and win awards. And in closing, I just want to play this short interview with Tony Doro of ENCA.
Now for our books club this morning, we focus on something a little different. When last did you read a comic book or any comic book? Well, our next guest has created a 3-part comic book series in isiZulu. Illustrator Siama Suku wants to help children and adults learn to read in their mother tongue. He's released the 3rd installment in May this year. It is called Ulanga. Sia joins me now in the studio. Sia, how are you? I'm very good, thanks. Firstly, though, give us a bit about your background. You're a graphic designer, and you've won some awards before the past.
Sure. So I studied graphic design, and art has been part of my thing from a young age. And sort of having this discussion with my mother, I think it was circa 2015, about the shortage of books that are going into the township schools. I felt it's something I would do something about, but really it was meant to be a stint, just do a book and donate it to the school.
Yeah.
And it took off, and people kind of liked the first installment, Siyafunda isiZulu, and we found ways to do more books from there.
Okay. This is your 3rd installment that I'm actually holding up now, Ulanga. Now, it's very graphic. First, let's talk about the fact that when you go through your books, besides the fact that it's written in isiZulu, it's very graphic. Is that intentional?
To a degree, yes. I feel we can get to a point where the illustrations tell the story and not the words. And before we even get there, the illustration can actually support the word. So for non-isiZulu speakers, they can see what the word means just by looking at the image.
Okay. And when you go through, we went through this book and the story that you're telling, it's a very basic story, but what are you trying to illustrate here? Are you looking for just your modern day African heroes?
I would say that yes. I think we're used to the archetype of the American superhero, so to speak, with the cape, and they fly without the cape. And I think that's good. And I think that's good. We need those sort of heroes, but we also shouldn't miss out on the heroes, the everyday sort of guy who helps Ukoko Maulidi across the street, or the blind people with simple things. So I think these are the heroes we're trying to portray at Siyafunda at the moment, someone whom we can easily relate to.
And what's been the response so far?
Well, it's been pretty cool actually. Look, we're launching on May 12th. Unjabulo we launched last year, and Unjabulo was received very well. The kids just love the fact that they could identify with a township kid who wants to build spaceships and go to space.
Yeah, and Unjabulo is also featured in this one as well.
Yeah, he's featured here as well.
Yeah.
He's exchanging notes with Ulan.
Yeah. I can see your face brightens up when you talk about the books. But you're self-published. Tell me how difficult it is, and how did you end up being self-published? Did you get a negative reaction from some of these major publishers?
I wouldn't say I got negative reactions that led me to self-publish, but self-publishing it's always been something I've wanted to do purely because I wanted to make the content the way I want to make the content and distribute it the way I feel I want to get it distributed. And part of that is being sort of adamant about writing in my mother tongue. And obviously, if we have the opportunity to translate it in other languages in the future. But the difficulties really have just been on the ground, reaching the people physically. I think digitally we're doing okay. I mean, we are easily accessible on social media, through our websites here, online. It's just really getting to the people physically. That's been our difficulty. And obviously access to funding. So if anyone is watching this and saying, and they love the work we're doing, funding is a very big thing for us.
Yeah, it must be. Is this now your full-time job?
It is. it always has been since I started. Yeah.
Okay, because I'm looking at your graphic design side, because at some point you designed a beautiful Zulu alphabet using 25 lively animals. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that one was. Look, I had something like 50 animals in the beginning, and then I had to narrow it down to the alphabet, right? But even that, it was like you wanna put a tiger in there, but what is a tiger?
Yeah, that's the thing.
And we need to contextualize that, because in history, there were no tigers roaming around Manongoma, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's all those tricky things that I got into, but it was also fun. I learned so much about the language. I learned so much about how books can actually be made. And Siyafunda isiZulu, so you could say it takes from the nonsense poem, the Jabberwocky poems, making fun sentences using alliteration and assonance to teach pronunciation.
Yeah, and just how important is it for you? Because in schools now, most of these kids are speaking English. It's now, it's just a worldwide phenomenon now. And you are writing in your mother tongue. How important is that? And do you think we're kind of losing that a little bit now?
I think it's good that the kids are learning in English. English is, like all languages, is a powerful tool. We're communicating with it right now. But it's also important that the children start at ECD level, early education level. They start with their native language to learn. They are less likely to drop out of school by doing that, and they are less likely to fail. So we need to encourage that. I mean, let them do what they need to do at school, and then at home we need to be enforcing them to learn their mother tongue.
Oh, fantastic stuff. So, yeah, good talking to you. So the new edition, or the latest book that's launching this coming May, Ulanga. That's the one. Fantastic stuff.
Thank you, Tony.
All right. Siya Masuku, the illustrator and also an author of this fantastic series for young kids. Stay with us. You're watching more.
If you have questions, please bring them through. I'll do my best to answer them. Okay, we'll start there.
Forgive me if I'm mistaken, Chief, but the thing is, the first book that you put across, the one which was green, that was to teach kids alphabets from A to Z.
Yes.
Correct? I don't know, I think I missed, maybe I must have missed, but I just checked a couple of times. I couldn't find the alphabet R. R for Romeo. Is there a reason behind that?
Yeah, well spotted. Yeah. So originally in isiZulu there is no R. So
all
you'll
right.
find like there's a famous sitcom called Mzi Wizinzi, is what I've heard of. And it's about these middle-aged men who live in the hostels. And whenever they would refer to room 5, they say room 5. So R has been sort of switched up with the L sound. However, these days people just say Elumi. It's colloquial, but it's becoming accepted. I think it's just a way of the language evolving.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks.
And the thing with it, is that like a signature?
Umkhele, by the way, is it's a king's headdress. It's a crown, so to speak. And there's two versions. There's this one, Umkhele Wangwe, and then there's Ingwe's leopard. And then there's the other one, the name has missed me, but of an antelope. So it doesn't have the tail stuff here. Now, is it a signature? I don't know. I just like making it part of what I do. For one reason, which is no secret, is that look, I'm hoping that, what's your name, bro?
File.
File. I'm hoping one day you're top. You're an animator.
I'm from students.
You're a film student. I'm hoping one day you're making top films, man. And maybe somehow you'll be like, I remember that guy with the funny hat was there. So even if you don't remember my name, hopefully there's something that, because if you think about it, your favorite teacher wasn't the one who had the most knowledge, or it's the one who shared an experience with you that you felt and you could remember. And these are, I think in your repertoire, you should find ways to do that. So Umkhaile, I wear it really as part of that, to be honest. But also, it's just, for me, it's just a way to express myself and saying, okay, cool, what can we do with the traditional Umkhaile? How do we envision the future with Umkhaile? And this is what it is, and who knows how to look in 5 years.
Would you, in future, are there plans for actually making it all 11 languages for this?
Yeah. Well, look, you mean for the comic series, sorry?
Yes, the whole book in general.
Okay. The Siyafunda isiZulu, the alphabet book, the first interview I had was with Gareth Cliff, and I said, look, we're going to make this into 11 official languages, this whole Siyafunda thing, we're going to accommodate all languages. And he quickly just said, no, we just got to stick to one, kind of have, and I disagreed with him, and now we have all these other languages, and that's the thing, it's like, why not? Why should we limit ourselves to one thing when the possibilities are endless? So yes, we are looking to look if we can get Kiswahili, if we can translate these into Kiswahili, Yoruba, all these other languages, the Twi, you name them, So I don't want to limit what we do to anything. I think the time will tell, basically.
I'm a film student also. I'm not sure how competition and stuff works in animation, but I'm sure it's the same as us here in film and online. Would you say that you're able to own your market now in terms of there's a vast majority of folks out there and things like that? So would you say that, did you face a challenge or be doubtful that, okay, there's so many other authors, what's going to make my books and comics different from the others, and will I be able to survive the marketplace, so to speak? And are you still surviving?
Well, in storytelling, we've got what we call a hero's journey. You guys know that. And it's simple. I mean, if the best way to create your own path is to not do what other people have done. Okay? And I think really, if you're really honoring your work and doing the best of your ability and trusting your gut with your art form, you're most likely going to create your own path. The point is sticking to it, okay? Because every now and then you can get sidetracked, and there'll be the latest craze, and it'll be making money or getting a lot of viewers or followers. But I'm lucky enough that I've managed to just stick to what I want to do. So yes, I face challenges. I mean, like, you won't believe how many doors have shut me down. Like, trying to get a book to Pick n Pay. Okay, they've got a children's book section. Trying to get the book to Pick n Pay, they'll let you know that we work with certain distributors and you need to have certain requirements, which I still don't meet, which I really don't care about meeting, really. Okay, because like I said, I've got my own market where I know how people buy my book, and I am lucky to a lot. I'm not saying I figured it out just like that. It's just a matter of staying true to what you believe in. I mean, I was saying this morning that when the Gauteng Education Department called this morning, it was a surprise call. In fact, we spoke in March this year, and I sent an email last week to say, are we still in it? And they called, they're like, okay, cool, we're taking the books. Like, okay. And I know that this is where the market is for me right now. We're speaking to the Spanish embassy. They like the comics. They want to take them to Spain. Okay, it's literally, you gotta set your own path, and it's by being stubborn, and you'll fail a lot. I failed so many times, my brother. But when you get that small victory, it just gives you the extra go to say, let's continue. And eventually, you'll get to a point where people will actually want to join your market. I believe that. Cool.
Any other questions? Okay. Nothing. Any other other artists who ask artistic questions? Give me.
Okay, let's start with the lady.
What is your favorite method to use when you create your artworks?
A very good question. Every time I've been asked that, I've always replied, it depends on what the story, its essence, how it makes, what feeling it is to project. If the story is quite a, if it's a nice story, you know, let's say about friendship, that's like a nice, soft story, so to speak. Why don't you use watercolors to enhance that? If it's a story about war and all this stuff, why don't you use charcoal? Okay, cool. Not only use that, but how can we make charcoal look different? Okay, so that when someone looks at it, they don't think it's charcoal. They want to say charcoal, but they just don't know how to say it because of how you've. In other words, just finding whatever medium that really resonates with you at the time, and then finding ways to also not make it just be that, just make it look interesting. I hope it answers. Cool.
Also, in terms of the future, seeing that most of your work is also based on art, do you by chance have any vision of becoming a big influence or starting a whole different, I don't want to say movement, but sort of contribute to an age that could be a beginning of what's next to come, with you creating something that sort of leads the new way for future writers and artists?
Yeah, look, I mean, firstly, I do this for personal reasons. It's selfish, mind you, I might say, but it's for me to get fulfillment out of it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. That's why I left conventional work, right? Now, that's the most important thing to me. But if it reaches someone and it helps them get through life in a certain way, like I couldn't be more humble about that. Like I'm grateful for that. And when I started, to be honest, I had that mindset that I want to do things and change the world. And I realized like the only thing I need to change, the only world I need to change is within me. And by doing that, everything around me will accommodate that. So I hope it answers your question.
It sort of does, but I get what you mean.
Yes, if I have the opportunity to become an influencer of sort through my
Well,
work.
not really the opportunity, but do you feel that maybe one day, without forcing it, like naturally, you will be acknowledged for the person you will become in the future? That we don't yet see.
Yeah, well, it's for me. It's neither here nor there. I mean, how do you know you'll be here in the next hour, in the next year? You know, it would be pretty presumptuous of me to say, yeah, in 10 years' time I'll be this and that. You know, hence I also find it hard to write business plans. Like 10 years' time, like, hey man, like I'm trying to figure out the next, like this moment. When you start looking at things like that, man, all the other stuff really doesn't matter. You're trying to give it your best shot now. And if it happens that in 10 years' time you're this cool cat, well, take it, man. Yeah?
Yeah, that's.
You said one of the most important things for you was, in general, changing your internal workings. What's one thing you've shifted significantly? Like, what's one belief that you shifted within your interior self that's kind of shaped or changed?
What? Okay, sorry, you were done, right?
Yeah.
What I've definitely learned about myself now is how to conquer the things that I fear. And I look in retrospect when I was a kid. I've always been the sportest kid, especially in the rugby team. I remember always going onto the field in primary school and just afraid. It's like, I can't believe I'm actually going onto the field to play against all these guys. But after the one tackle, then suddenly I'm like, actually, it's not that bad. It only hits me now as a grown-up that's what life's about. And all the things that I've went through as a boy or as a child were really just mapping me up to understand that, look, everything I'm going through or everything I'm undertaking needs to be difficult. It needs to actually make me scared of it. Otherwise, why do it? You You know what I'm saying? Why do the easy stuff? So that's my thing for me. I've learned so much about myself is that whatever I want to do, the next project I want to do, I want to do something that I've never done before, and I want to learn from it and come out the other side a different person.
Any other questions, guys? Happy? I just want to share something with Sia and with John, with Gareth Cliff, and I think it was Fili who said something that in terms of the languages. So last night I was studying the guys in another class. I was watching an animation series last night, a movie. But what happened was, it's a Japanese, it's anime, right? But at the end they showed the credits of 5 other languages that they've translated the movie for. Now Japanese culture, I don't know if you from the film, Japanese anime is created only for Japanese people. Only. They're not thinking about you suddenly in Africa. But they have a vision to say, this story is universal. Let's share it and populate it in the world. So we're talking about French, German, what was the other language? French, German, Portuguese. Like, they translate, obviously English is 1/5, but they're translating their languages. And I think as South Africans, we should cater for that. Because there's some kids sitting in Limpopo, they would love to read these mother language, but it doesn't stop you, as you said, guys in Switzerland as well, or guys in Holland also want this comic can also work there. So why limit yourself? Because the Japanese have been doing it for over 30 years. Why, as us as Africans, why must we limit ourselves to one market when your stories are universal? So would love to see. So would love to see one day when you guys are like, Aiden's going to be in Japan. We'd love to see more in Japan passing bookstores. Hey man, there's Japulani or there's Mulanga. Like on a comic shop, but it's like in Japanese. And like you didn't take a selfie and then you hashtag Sia. So just to say there's some vision that guys going to be in Japan soon. Love to see your book in Japan. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that'll be.
So thanks guys. We're going to see if we can get some more cool guys, like say some local talent. Give you guys a perspective on what's happening in the marketplace, what's happening in the industry, and struggle that is overcome to be where it is now. You're not done yet.
I just want to, guys, if there's any suggestion or anything that you think I should be aware of that could help me, I'm more than willing to hear from you guys. Like I said, I'm here to learn from you guys as well. So feel free to throw it at me, man, and I'll make a note of it. And hopefully, if it comes through, I'll credit you.